Over the past 10 or so years, RPGs have shifted from the turn-based JRPG style combat to a more action-oriented approach, keeping the pace of games moving in the hopes of keeping players engaged longer with their experience. Battle Chasers Nightwar, however, kicks it back to the classic JRPG genre with a few new quirks and twists of their own. Battle Chasers Nightwar is a game that's rich with lore based on the Battle Chasers comics that came out in the late 90s, early 2000s. Thankfully, I didn't have to read the comics or be a fan of the comics to truly understand the story. The game quickly gets the players up to speed, and it gives them an idea of how each of the characters' personalities interact and clash together, and how they work together as a team. The game itself doesn't really advance any of those personal stories though, and focuses solely on the game story at hand. This is a great opportunity to where if there's a sequel to this game, it would be really nice for them to truly grow the characters and have us come to care for them even more than we already do after playing the game. The very first thing that caught my eye with Battle Chasers Nightwar was the artwork. When I was going through the trailer of the game just to see what it was all about before I dove into my playing the game and starting my review, the artwork was truly what caught my eye. The opening cutscene, the comic strip cutscenes, and then just the battle scenes as well. They work so well. The opening cutscene is a fully animated cutscene, as you saw at the beginning of the video, like you would see like in an anime or just any cartoon you would see on TV. The comic strip cutscenes, which was kind of like the opening scene to really get you into the story, that, and there's more of those throughout the game as well, that paid perfect respect to the comics that people were fans of. You could just see the influence, you could see the ideas they grabbed from those comics and pulled them into those cutscenes into the game, and I feel like it pays a great respect to both the creators of the comics and the longtime fans of the Battle Chasers series. And then just when it comes to the battles and just walking around the world, these 3D animated characters just walking around or like doing battles and stuff just are on like a 2D painted background, like oil painted background. I don't even know if it's oil painted, but it looks it. I don't know much about art, but it works. It's beautiful. I loved looking at it. And then on top of all that, you get this beautiful soundtrack that just fits every mood of the game perfectly. Like, I've had this soundtrack on in the background while I'm working on other stuff, because it's just like, it's perfect background music that just, it's good, it's easy on the ears, it's nice to listen to, and just all of it blends perfectly together. And a lot of that, when it comes to a Kickstarter title or an indie title, just one part of it's going to be jarring, but for this, it just all blends together so well. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of RPGs over the past 10 years have taken a more action-oriented approach. They have shied away from the turn-based combat and gone more for the think on your feet, go, 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 don't stop mentality to try and quicken the pace of the gameplay almost. With Battle Chasers Nightwar, however, they have gone back to the turn-based JRPG style combat, which I personally enjoy. During this combat, you have different stats, different tech trees you can kind of build your characters around to help them perform in battle. Whether you want your character to be focused solely on tanking or solely on healing or, you know, bleeding or just hitting massive crits or, you know, boost their speed. All these different things you can build your character around with different talent points you get after they level up and stuff like that. Gear obviously also helps with all these builds, and there's lots of different kind of gear you can gather and you can collect throughout the game, and you can craft it to truly build your characters how you want them to, which is awesome. There's one new unique technique, different twist on the JRPG combat that they have for the characters in this game, and that's called the overcharge. Overcharge builds in combat with all of the basic attacks or defense that the characters do throughout the combat. Overcharge, you know, grows with each of those, and each of the characters have a different max overcharge they can hit. This overcharge is used in place of mana. So if you are you know, you can build up your overcharge, and then you can do one of your special moves with one of your characters, and it'll use your overcharge instead of your mana. This is super helpful whenever you're in a super long dungeon, and you don't want to use all your mana within the first, you know, 3 combats that you're in, first 3 battles you're in, because you're going to be out of mana, and you have this long dungeon, hour-long dungeon that you have to be in. So the overcharge, managing your overcharge is super helpful and super key to being successful in the game. It resets back to 0 after every battle unless you have a skill set that helps you carry over some overcharge in the next battle. Another thing I noticed with the combat is that the character's a little unconventional. The giant mech, he's a healer. He's not your tank, he's your healer. When I first saw the trailers and all that stuff, when I first saw the characters, I was like, he's gonna be my tank. He's gonna be an awesome tank because he's a big old mech and that's what they do. He's your freaking healer. That's awesome. The little girl, I wouldn't call her the main character, but the kind of character that everything seems to revolve around, she's your tank. She's not your healer. She's not just a DPS. She's your tank. She'll take all those hits. It's kind of awesome. So that little bit of just like switching it up from the norm that you normally see in RPGs, that was awesome, and I really did enjoy that. Now, you heard me mention dungeons and how they take a while and how, you know, you want to manage your overcharge and your mana as you're going through these dungeons. But there's more to these dungeons. Each of these dungeons are obviously, you know, story-based, story-driven. You're there for a reason. But each time you go into one of these, they're randomized. Their layout is randomized. The rooms are all generally the same, but they're just laid out in a different order. But there's always the same number of rooms, just placed differently. There's hidden treasures in them that you have to, you know, obviously find if you want to get the most out of it. And there's different difficulties of each dungeon when you go into it that you can choose based on your playstyle. If you're just kind of playing the game for the story, just kind of going through the motions, there's an easy mode. There's a normal mode if you want a little bit of a challenge, but you don't want to kind of, you know, get your butt beat. And then after you complete the dungeons on either normal or easy, the legendary mode for that dungeon unlocks, so you can go back in, get a little bit better gear, obviously grind up some of your characters. It is an RPG. There's gonna be grinding. I've seen a lot of people complain about the grinding in the game. It's an RPG. It's a JRPG. It's really much like the classic ones where you have to grind up every character separately. It's gonna take time. It's gonna be an investment. Some people don't like that. Other people do. I personally enjoy it. Just take that as it will, guys. If you don't like grinding, this game might not be for you, truthfully, because each of the characters do level up separately. If they do not take place in combat, then they will not get XP. So the randomized story dungeons kind of keep that fresh, keeps that grind fresh. That way you aren't just, you know, going through the same dungeon. I go left here, I go right here, I go up here. It switches it up some, trying to keep it fresh. So keep that in mind whenever you go to possibly play the game, that you will have to go back to dungeons, but it does offer the different difficulties if you want to challenge yourself when you have to go back and grind up some of the characters. Battle Chasers Nightwar took a lot of risks, throwing itself back to the JRPG style combat while adding in some new mechanics, along with basing itself off of the cult classic Battle Chasers comic series that I personally never heard of. It had the potential to be great just as much as it had a chance to fail. Thankfully for the developers at Airship Syndicate, Battle Chasers Nightwar turned out absolutely fantastic. If you're a fan of RPGs, especially JRPGs, then I fully recommend that you pick this game up right away. For more reviews on video games and hardware alike, as well as first looks, editorials, and build guides, be sure to head on over to KBMOD.com.